Gonna start off with some trivia straight away. Hope everyone's doing well this Sabbath day. Gonna start off with some trivia, and then we're gonna get into this study. And been promising this study for a while, yeah. And I was doing it yesterday, and I was gonna go one direction and focus predominantly on Ham and Shem. But then I felt impressed to cover the whole plethora of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. So, instead of just concentrating solely on Ham and Shem, we're going to be looking at all three. So it's going to be quite extensive. Going to be going through a lot of scriptures, which is a blessing, a good thing. And I hope that is fruitful by Yah's grace. I pray that I decrease and the Most High Yah increase at this time, and then we get a fresh revelation of ourselves, but more importantly, we get a fresh revelation of the Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. So, just a bit of trivia before we kickstart the study. Just a bit of trivia before we kickstart the study. Also, before I kickstart the study actually, and before we get into the trivia, are the moderators in the group? Because I've got inclination that some people are going to start, sowing seeds of discord. And I don't mean sowing seeds of money, But yeah, just if the moderators can be sentinels and just ensure that everything is run decently and in order, So, all right. Let me just shout out a few people that have joining us today. Michael Anderson, Rashunda, Kola Congo, Teresa, Bantu Sister, Neela, Jules B, Kenya, Warrior Lord, Humble Servant. So, like I said, today I was felt impressed because you know what? There's a lot of dialogue that goes backwards and forwards, yeah. And many a times there's a lot of identity issues that we face as Israel. So people will call themselves two continents merged together. I'm an African American, or we'll call ourselves just the most randomest thing. So I wanted to go in this study looking at just Ham and Shem. But like I said, while I was doing the study last night, I just felt very much impressed to talk about the whole plethora of what took place in the past, which has brought us to where we are today. So, bit of trivia just to warm up the brain cells and that. So, okay, we're looking at the statue in front of us. We've looked at this many a times in a lot of detail, previous studies, etc. So, we know that the head of gold is Babylon, silver is the chest and the arms, bronze is the thighs, and iron is the legs, etc. But what I want you guys to do today is just to hazard a guess, just hazard a guess. Hazard a guess, let me say that properly. Hazard a guess of if you think the following is a Shemitic, Hamitic, or Japhetic. I hope I've said that correctly. But yeah, alright. So, where's my arrow? There's my arrow. So we got this one here. Babylon. If you was to guess which son Babylon came out of, which son would you say is the progenitor or the forefather, the forerunner, the founding father of Babylon? Would you say Shemitic, Hamitic, or Japhetic? So probably just put S if you think it's Shem, H if you think it's Ham, and J if you think it's Japheth. Okay. We're seeing a lot of Hams. Alright, okay, so everyone's saying that Babylon is Ham. All right. Some are saying Shem. Okay, Bantu sister. Somebody else said Japhetic. All right. So we've got a mixed multitude of answers on this one. Fair enough. Okay. So Medo-Persia. Which one would you say Medo-Persia fits into? Shem, Ham, or Japheth? So which one would you say Medo-Persia fits into? J, S, or H? Okay, a lot of people are going with J. Somebody went with H, but somebody went with S, but the majority are going with J. Okay. Grecian Empire. Who does the Grecian Empire belong to? Shem, Ham, or Japheth? S, H, or J? This is just trivia. This isn't a part of the study. We're just warming up. All glory to the Most High, Yah. We're waiting for people as well. We're extending the invitation for more people to join the study today. But if you was to guess the Grecian Empire, if it's a T, a S, or a H, sorry, T. If it's a S, a H, or a J, okay. So everybody's going with J. Fair enough. Lastly, if we was to look at the Roman Empire or the Holy Roman Empire, because you had two legs, which means there was two divisions of Rome. You had Papal Rome, you had Pagan Rome. Then it baptized itself and became Papal Rome. And in Pagan Rome, it was the time of the what? The time of the... Anyone remember? Okay, you had the time of the Caesars, then you had the time of the popes. But anyway, Roman, who are we saying Rome is? Who's the daddy of Rome? S, H, or J? Okay. Varied responses, varied responses. Some are saying S, some are saying J, some are saying H. Wow, okay. Some are saying S and J. Interesting. All right then. Well, hopefully, towards the end of this study, we might be able to answer these questions. I think with Greece, it's a no-brainer that's definitely a J. But with Babylon, might be a bit interesting. With the Medo and the Persian, that also might be very interesting. And with the Roman Empire, that also might be a little bit interesting. But I'm not giving any answers. So it's trivia without any answers. But hopefully, as we go through the study, we might be able to see who fits where and who fits with what, potentially. Alright then. So like I said, quite a few things to go through by Yah's grace. And I hope that we get a fresh revelation and we are able to see. Someone's still saying, okay, someone's saying Ham and some is saying Shem. Alright then, let's go. Okie dokie. So 1 Corinthians verse 50, 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 46. It says, howbeit, that was not first which is spiritual, but that which is natural, and afterward that which is spiritual. What? What does that mean? Like, what's that? So what he's saying is the first thing is natural, and then the second thing is spiritual. So in the Bible it talks about Christ being the second Adam, but you can't be the second Adam because Adam is Adam. So how can you be a second Adam? It means he was a type of Adam. Yeah. Also, if I just move this chat box, it's oh no, it isn't. If you go to when John says, "Here is the Lamb that taketh away the sins of the world," when he points at his cousin Yeshua, he's not calling Yeshua a lamb, but he's saying that Yeshua represents spiritually what the lamb was in the Old Testament, a lamb without blemish. Romans 8 verse 6, for to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. So we all were born with a carnal birth of blood, etc. But then when we enter in and we have the rebirth, there's a spiritual mind or a spiritual process that has to take place. But the natural man received not the things of Yahuwah, for they are foolish unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. So like I said, when Nicodemus said, how can a man be born again? Can he go into his mom a second time? He thought the Hamashiach was asking for somebody to go and be reborn, literally going through the whole process of pregnancy. He couldn't fathom that he was talking spiritually, a spiritual rebirth, not a physical one. Revelation 11 verse 8, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which is spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord or Hamashiach was crucified. So we see there's physical and the spiritual. You have a physical birth and a spiritual birth. There was a physical lamb and there was a spiritual lamb. Not saying it was floating around like, what you might be thinking. I'm just saying you have a type and then you have an antitype. But also, physical decisions can have national and spiritual effects. What do I mean by that? So a physical decision can have a national or a spiritual impact. Adam and Eve made a physical decision and it had a spiritual impact. Ham and Noah, Ham made a physical decision which had a spiritual and national impact. Jacob and Esau, Esau made a physical decision that had a spiritual and national impact. Israel and Barabbas, when Israel said, free unto us Barabbas, they made for themselves a physical, and that physical decision had a national and spiritual effect. Hope that makes sense. So physical things that we do can have a spiritual effect, and it can also have a national effect. Okay, so now we just cleared up that. Let's start looking at the study in more detail. I just wanted you to see that there can be a physical decision that can impact not just you as an individual, but can impact your nationality too. And it can impact your spirituality too. Or another word for that, you could say traditions, habits, tendencies. You can repeat the mistakes of your father. As you read throughout the Bible, we see that Israel was constantly forgetting how the Most High had brought them out of Egypt, and he had to remind them continually, and they kept forgetting their history, and they kept making the same mistakes through not knowing their history, and it was having an impact on them spiritually, whereby they were committing spiritual fornication with other gods and other deities of the land. So physical can have a spiritual and even a national impact. So the founding fathers of the nations, when we think of founding fathers, 3 sons should come to mind. Yeah, everyone came through Adam, but then when it got to, post-flood, the nation divided nationally. There was a national division. So we all came from Adam and Eve, but then when the flood came, it started to diversify. Genesis 10, verse 10. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. So after the flood, there's a new there's a new there's a new posterity of sons, yeah, or that belong to Noah. Half the world's been, well, not half, all the world's been wiped out except for those who were on the ark or in the ark. Noah and his 3 sons and their wives. So you had Japheth, Ham, and Shem. Now Japheth went on to have 7 sons. We're just dealing with sons, but in this particular slide, I've included the grandsons just because I wanted to show you another point. So, Genesis 10, verses 2 to 5, it says, the sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, Tiras. So they were the 7. And the sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Repav, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan were Elisha and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodamine. And by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their land, everyone after his tongue and after their families in their nation. So what are the Japhetic nations called biblically? This is the first mention of the word Gentile in the Bible. What were they known as? What were the sons of Japheth known as? They were known as what? By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, family in their nations. Now, I've said this previously, like when you go to Scotland and you hear the name Mac, or you hear the name Fitzgerald, MacDonald, Mac means son of, Fitz means son of. So all these clans and people were named after a father, a grandfather. They were named after a patriarchal system. And it's the same with how Noah and his sons were and how they divided their land between their sons. But I'm rushing slightly ahead. But what I wanted you to see was that these nations, they were known as the Gentile nations, these Japhetic nations. Now, when you go into Esau and you look at the concordance and you get the root word, it says goy. It appears 559 times in the King James. And it's goy or goyi or goim or guim. Can never pronounce that properly. But goy. It says apparently from the same root as H1465 in the sense of amassing. It means a foreign nation, hence a Gentile. Also figuratively, a troop of animals or a flight of locusts. A Gentile, a heathen, nation and people. So that's what that word actually means. And we also see in 1 Chronicles verse 1 to 5 and 7, it gives you the same catalogue of Japheth and his sons, you know, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, Tiras. Then it goes and gives you the grandkids, Gomer, Ashkenaz, etc., etc. But I just wanted you to see that the seed of Japheth, or the sons of Japheth, yeah, including the grandkids, including the grandchildren, were known biblically as Gentiles. I hope that's plain. So, swiftly moving on. Now the sons of Ham, Genesis 10 verse 6. And the sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. So Ham had 4 sons. And we see again in Chronicles 1, chapter 1, verse 8, the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, Canaan. Notice though, there's no mention of Ham being synonymous or reference to Gentile, which is very, very interesting. Just throwing it out there. When we go through the genealogy and the lineage and this, that, the other, when it comes to Japheth, it just says, yeah, man, this is the Gentile people, them. But when it talks about Ham, it doesn't really paint Ham with that brush. Just throwing it out there. Anyway, the sons of Shem. Now, it may do further on, but I'm just saying at the introduction of the sons in the first instance, it doesn't. Before somebody says, yeah, it does. I'm just saying in the first instance, it doesn't. But anyway, the sons of Shem. Genesis 10, 21 to 22. Very interesting. The Bible does things where it just drops little nuggets in and you think it's random. You're like, why did the Bible just drop that in there when it had nothing really to do with what the thing was about, so it would appear on the surface level? All right. So Genesis 10, 21 to 22. Now this is still dealing with the sons of Shem, the sons of Ham, the sons of Japheth. Genesis 10 breaks down the nations that came out of Noah and his posterity, his three sons. So, unto Shem, also the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. So in that first verse, the Bible wants us to know that Shem was the father of Eber. Why does he want us to know that Shem is the father of Eber? Everyone else, it just starts off with Japheth and his sons, yada yada yada. Ham and his sons, yada yada yada. Comes to Shem, is that Shem also the father of all the children of Eber. Why does that Eber? What is it doing there? It's a bit random. Anyway, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were born children. And then it goes on to tell you his actual children. Yeah? So it gives you that precursor. And then it goes on to explain who Shem's children are. So it says, the children of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. So, question, was Shem the youngest, the middle child, or the eldest? If you look at 21, it says he was the brother of Japheth, the elder. Also, often firstborns kind of mess up everything, you know. When we see Cain, he kind of just messed up the show, you know. When we see Esau, he kind of just messed up the show, you know. When we look at the prodigal son, yeah, you had the young son that did his thing and lived a life of craziness and haphazardness and every nest under the sun. But the older brother, who knew better, should have known better, was probably as bad as the prodigal. So usually in the Bible, the elder son kind of gets painted with a bad brush, or he doesn't really live up to the title or to the expectation of the father or of the community thereby. But in the case of Shem, he kind of goes against this narrative and against this framework per se. Okay, so what we've just learnt here is that Noah in Genesis 10 post-flood comes out the ark with his three sons, and then his three sons go on to have 5, which is Shem, 4, which is Ham, and 7, which belong to Japheth. So the most fruitful out of Noah's direct sons turned out to be the sons of Japheth, closely followed by Shem, and then followed by Ham. We're talking about the sons, not the grandchildren or any of that stuff, just the sons in this particular where we are right now. So, Book of Jubilees. And in the 6th year thereof, she bare him the son, and he called his name Peleg, for in the days when he was born, the children of Noah began to divide the earth among themselves. For this reason, he called his name Peleg. And they, Noah's sons, divided it secretly amongst themselves and told Noah. And it came to pass in the beginning of the 33rd Jubilee that they were divided the earth, that they divided the earth into 3 parts. For Shem and Ham, Japheth, according to the inheritance of each, in the 1st year, in the 1st week, when one of us had been sent, was with them. And then we see in Chronicles, for a precept, First Chronicles chapter 1 verse 19, it says, and Eber was born, notice that name, Eber, we just heard about Eber a minute ago, and unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, because in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Continuing with verse 11 of Jubilees, and he called his sons Noah, and they drew nigh to him, they and their children, and he divided the earth into lots, which his 3 sons were to take in possession, and they reached forth their hands, and took the writing out of the bosom of their father. Breaking it down. Peleg, earth's divided, Noah's sons off the ark, looking at the landmass, looking at the potential. They're like, boy, I like this, I like that, you like this, you like that. And they just, had a Brexit conversation amongst themselves and says, yo, which way are we going to do this? How can we divide this territory? And they came to an agreement, and they cast lot. And no, they came to an agreement, and there was casting lots, etc. And Noah, they told Noah, so they told their father their plans, and then their father ratified what they had already agreed to, and codified it and split it 3 ways. Okay. Jubilees 8 verse 12. And there came forth on the writing as Shem's lot, because they were casting lots. And there came forth on the writing as Shem's lot, the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons for the generations of eternity, from the middle of the mountain range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water from the river Tina, and his portion goes towards the west, through the midst of the river, and it extends till it reaches the water of the abysses, out of which this river goes forth and pours its water into the sea of Miat. And this river flows into the great sea, and all that is towards the north is Japheth's, and all that is towards the south belongs to Shem. So he's saying, above the middle, all that landmass in the north belongs to Japheth, but below, underneath Japheth, all that land belongs to Shem. And it extends till it reaches Karaso. This is in the bosom of the tongue, which looks towards the south. And his portion extends along the great sea, and it now listen to how, I don't know, man, the lamb was crazy, but anyway, and it extends in a straight line till it reaches the west of the tongue, which looks towards the south, for this sea is named the tongue of the Egyptian sea. And it turns from here towards the south, towards the mouth of the great sea, on the shore of its waters, and it extends to the west Afra, and it extends till it reaches the waters of the river Gihon, and to the south of the waters of Gihon, to the banks of this river. And it extends towards the east till it reaches the Garden of Eden, make a note of that, to the south thereof, to the south, and from the east of the whole land of Eden, and of the whole east, it turns to the east and proceeds till it reaches east of the mountain named Rapha, and it descends to the bank of the mouth of the river Tina. This portion came forth by lot for Shem and his sons, that they should possess it forever unto his generations forevermore. So those same sons that we just read out here, the 5 sons, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, Aram, this landmass belonged to them, belonged to all those brothers who were the sons of Shem. And notice in verse 16, it said it extends towards the east till it reaches the Garden of Eden, to the south thereof, to the south, and from the east of the whole land of Eden, and to the whole east it turns to the east and proceeds till it reaches to the east of the mountain named Rapha, and it descends to the bank of the mouth of the river Tina. But I just want you to home in on those references to Eden. Okay. Jubilees chapter 8 verse 18. And Noah rejoiced that his portion came forth from Shem and for his sons, and he remembered all that he had spoken with his mouth in the prophecy, for he had said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and may the Lord dwell in the dwelling of Shem. And he knew that the garden of Eden is the holy of holies, and the dwelling of the Lord, and Mount Sinai the center of the desert, and Mount Zion the center of the navel of the earth. These three were created as holy places facing each other. And he blessed the God of gods, who put the word of the Lord into his mouth, and the Lord forevermore. Wow, a lot. So Shem knew that the Garden of Eden is the holy place of holies and the dwelling place of the Lord. So he knew, a lot of the history had been gone post-flood, this, that, the other. But Shem retained to a lot of the history of old, where the Most High used to dwell with them in the garden, talking about Adam and Eve, etc. And the history of that. Similar to Daniel, who knew the history of his people and what his people went through. And similar to, I believe, was it Tobit and many other people who, and Stephen in Acts, I believe, 17 or chapter 10, and he was able to recount the history of Israel. He was able to recount the history of what was happening with the predecessors in the garden. But anyway, and he knew that a blessed portion and a blessing had come to Shem and his sons unto the generations forever, the whole land of Eden, and the whole land of the Red Sea, and the whole land of East, and India, and on the Red Sea, and the mountains thereof, and all the land of Bashan, and all the land of Lebanon, and the islands of Kaphator, and all the mountains of Zainah and Amana, and the mountains of Ashur, and in the north, and all the land of Elam, Ashur, and Babel, and Susan, and Medial, and all the mountains of Ararat, and all the regions beyond the sea, which is beyond the mountains of Ashur towards the north, a blessed and spacious land, and all that is in it is very good. Ararat is actually Armenia. Armenia, I believe, is near Turkey. So this is where all the landmass that covered Shem at this time. So it's quite vast, quite, impressive, to say the least. But you can find this in Jubilees 8, 18 to 21. So let's continue. The Hamites. And for Ham came forth the second portion beyond the Gihon towards the south to the right of the garden, and it extends towards the south, and it extends to all the mountains of fire, and it extends towards the west of the sea Attal, and it extends towards the west till it reaches the sea Mahuk, that sea into which everything which is not destroyed descends. For me, when I was reading that, I was thinking, is this the Dead Sea? Or, could that be like the Dead Sea, potentially, where everything is destroyed descends? Interesting. And it goes forth towards the north to the limits of Gadir, and it goes forth to the coast of the waters of the sea, to the waters of the great sea, till it draws near to the river Gihon, and goes along the river Gihon till it reaches the right of the Garden of Eden. And this is the land which came forth for Ham, and the portion which he was to occupy for himself and his sons unto their generation forever. Now, notice, land masses was being kind of coordinated in and around a place called Eden. Now, many people have all these conspiracy theories that the Eden was flooded with the flood and then it became Atlantis and Eden's just washed under the water to this day and yada, yada, yada. Other people have more, dramatic views that Eden was just taken up to heaven and the whole landmass was just taken up to heaven and, that's what's going to come down in Revelation. So there's all these different kind of isms and schisms that people, you know, try to make sense of what actually happened to Eden, you know. But hopefully, I'm gonna play with the brain slightly, and by Yah's grace, we'll be able to see a little bit more detail in terms of this place called Eden. All right, so side note regarding Eden. Genesis 3 verse 23. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. We're going to break all this down, you know. Ezekiel 31 verse 9. I have made him fair by the multitude of his branches, so that all the trees of Eden that were in the garden of God envied him. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Okay. Okay, let me read some more. Okay. No, I'll break it down. So, when you talk to people, like I said, there's kind of these views that, you know, they spin around and, you know, they're just there in the air. So, some people believe that Eden was flooded under the water, some Atlantis thing, you know, just there, hidden, sealed, all that kind of stuff. Then you have the other view. Eden was just transported, beam me up, Scotty, into heaven, and that's it. Yeah? That being said, I just want us to read with just a fresh perspective, you know? Just read it plainly, yeah? Okay, so let's just reread it again. And I was emphasizing certain things for purpose. I weren't just having a moment. I was just trying to emphasize certain things. All right, boom. Let's read. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the garden. Where did the Most High Yahuwah send Adam from and Eve from and this, that, the other? Where did he send them from? I should have included another scripture in here, you know. That would have just made it so plain. Oh, man. You know what? Let me try. All right, you know what? Let me try to find it quickly. Yo. Oh, yeah, got it. Bang. All right, let's do this. So, close him. All right, boom, bang, bing. So Genesis 3:23. Therefore the Lord Yahuwah sent him out from the garden of Eden. Yeah? Ezekiel 31 verse 9. I have made him fair by the multitude of his branches, so that all the trees of Eden that were in the garden of God envied him. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the garden of Eden cherubims. Okay, so I'm trying to get you to see that Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden of Eden, but they were never kicked out of Eden. Now someone's gonna say, yo, what's going on here? All right, just bear with me. Genesis 4 verse 16. There was only one person that was kind of kicked out of the land and went on to establish another land. Genesis 4 verse 16. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden. Now check it. If I'm your mom or your dad or whatever, and your mom and your dad kick you out your house, you've just been kicked out your house, you know, and you live in Florida. You got kicked out your house in Florida. You've been kicked out your house, but you haven't been kicked out of Florida. All right. You got kicked out your house in London. You got kicked out your house in London, but you didn't get kicked out of London. Your mom kicked you out the house in London and made sure she put security around the house so that you didn't get back into the house and that you couldn't find your way to the house. That's all I'm saying. Now, if we look at Cain, yeah, and you look at the land Nod in the concordance, the land Nod, it doesn't even mean he went to a land, you know. He didn't even go to a different land. It means vagrancy. This means Cain was just walking around on a nomadic tip, and then you know that he built the city and he named the city Enoch. Yeah, there's two Enochs. There's an Enoch from Cain and there's an Enoch from Seth. Not getting into that. But what I'm saying is Cain left the presence of the Most High and then gradually went further away from the Most High, and his posterity went further away, and they started building up cities and towns and this, that, and the other. And the people of Seth were more, keeping close to that land that they were familiar with, if that makes sense. So, the scripture that I wanted to throw in is this one here as well. Jubilees, chapter 3, verse 28 and 9. And on that day, after sin, was closed all the mouth of the beast and of the cattle and of the birds and of whatever walks and whatever moves, so that they could no longer speak, for they all had one with another, one lip, for they all had spoken one with another, one lip and one tongue. Now where does the Most High send them out of? Again, we just seen it again. We've got like precept upon precept here. And he sent Adam and Eve out of the garden, but he also sent who out of the garden? And he sent out of the garden all flesh that was in the garden. And all flesh that was scattered all flesh was scattered according to its fruits and according to its types unto places which had been created for them. So the Most High wasn't reactive, he was proactive. He knew that man might sin, and he even made certain places or dwelling places for animals which would be habitable for them. So the polar bear, he made a cold place, fill in the blanks. That's what he did. But everyone was kicked out of the garden, yeah? But the land was still there. Hope that makes sense. And I hope that answers a lot of questions that you might get asked, etc., etc. And I was kind of thinking as a stretch, when you watch that Black Panther film and they got Wakanda, and it's just hidden. It's cloaked. You can't even, it's just cloaked. You can't get in. I was thinking, are these Hollywood spin doctors, they always try to put the truth out there in a crazy way, I was just thinking, rare. Okay. Because it just goes to say in the scriptures that he drove out the man and placed at the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. So it was just concealed and protected by cherubims, and they were kicked out of the garden, but they were not kicked out of the land. Hence why Shem was blessed, because he still kept it 100 and stayed in the land, But that's another story. Wow, it's the same story. But yeah, man, I hope that makes sense. We're gonna swiftly move on now. I'm gonna swiftly move on. Oh yeah, okay, before we move on, so there you go, there's your Eden. It was a land mass, yeah, but there was a garden that was inside this place called Eden, which is inaccessible. Yeah, only the garden was inaccessible. The land is still there, because the land is where the four waters come from. Your Euphrates, your Pisan, this, that, and the other, your Gihon, all these kind of places. So the land is still there to this day, but the garden has been concealed and protected by order of the Most High Yah. So I hope that makes sense biblically. Okay. And for Japheth came forth the third portion beyond the river Tina to the north of the outflow of its waters, and it extends northeasterly to the whole region of Gog, and to all the country east thereof. And it extends northerly to the north, and it extends to the mount of Kilt towards the north, and towards the sea of Mahuk, and it goes forth to the east of Gadir, and as far as the region of the waters of the sea, and it extends until it approaches the west of Farah, and it returns towards Epharag, and extends easterly to the waters of the sea of Miat. And it extends to the region of the river Tina in the northeasterly direction until it approaches the boundary of its waters towards the mountain Rapha, and it turns round towards the north. This is the land which came forth for Japheth and his sons as the portion of his inheritance, which he should possess for himself and his sons for their generations forever. 5 great islands and a great land in the north. Quick side note. These 3 sons had lands which were the best suitable for them. So I know previously I said that animals had certain lands that created that was the perfect environment for them to thrive in and to be fruitful and to multiply. That's the same thought process that happened with Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Jubilees 8 verse 29 to 30 says, "This is the land for Japheth and his sons as the portion of the inheritance which he should possess for himself and for his sons, for their generations forever." Verse 30. 5 great islands and the great land in the north. But what's wrong with this land in the north? Or what's wrong with these lands in the north? It is cold. And the land of Ham is hot. And the land of Shem is neither hot nor cold, but it is a blended cold and heat. Interesting. So Japheth had 5 great islands, and he also had a great land in the north, but it was cold. The land of Shem was hot, and the land of Ham was hot, and the land of Shem was a blend of hot and cold. Now I posted this on the community feed, and somebody responded, and I thought, wow, interesting response. He said, name the 5 great islands and the great land to the north. And he said Europe has 5 countries that consist solely of lands. They are Cyprus, Iceland, Malta, the Republic of Ireland, and the United Kingdom. And I was like, wow, that's very interesting. But do you see how intricate and meticulous and insightful the Book of Jubilees, which is part of the Ethiopian canon of the Orthodox Church, but also of the Beta Israel, and it preserves this pinpoint accuracy. All right, let's move on. So, Jubilees chapter 9. Just to swiftly recap, Noah gave, on the order of his sons, lands between the 3 after they did their lots and cast their lots, and he sanctioned it, blessed it, and divided it between the 3. So the land at that point was just divided between the 3. Now, Jubilees 9 verse 1, we're gonna start to see subdivisions of 3 portions, or we're just gonna see more subdivisions, should I say? Because now these 3 sons are going to divide the land between their sons. And Ham divided among his sons the first portion which came forth for Cush towards the east, and to the west of him for Mizraim, and to the west of him for Put, and to the west of him, and to the west thereof of the sea for Canaan. So the sons of Ham had their lot was divided by their father Ham. Now, interestingly, when we look at the genealogy of Ham, you got Cush, Canaan, Put, and Mizraim, the daddies. And then you also got their offspring, their grandsons. And we know from Cush you get Nimrod. Yeah, we know what Nimrod was about, I believe. And then from Mizraim, you get the Philistines, Goliath. We know what those guys were about. And then through Canaan, you get a lot of interesting people. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Girgashites, etc., etc. And some of us will know what they were about. So this is just to show you how the world began and leading us to where we are now. Okay. So Shem. And Shem also divided his sons, and the first portion came forth for Ham and his sons. So when they were dividing it, Ham, this time around, he got the first portion. Yeah. To the east of the river Tigris, till it approaches the east of the land of India, and of the Red Sea on its coast, and the waters of Didon, and all the mountains of Mibri, and Elah, and all the lands of Susan, and all that is on the side of Phrak of the Red Sea, and the river Tina. And for Asher came forth the second portion, all the land of Asher, and Nineveh. Nineveh, you know. Nineveh was a Shemitic. Okay. And Shinar, home of Babylon. That's another story. If you remember the trivia now, probably answering some of these questions. And to the border of India, and it descends and skirts the river. And for Arphaxad came forth the third portion, all the land of the region of the Chaldees, the Chaldeans, to the east of the Euphrates, bordering on the Red Sea, and all the waters of the desert close to the tongue of the sea, which looks towards Egypt, all the land of Lebanon. So we can see that Shem and his sons, we're hearing some names that are kind of interesting. We're hearing Chaldees, the Chaldeans. We're hearing Shinar. We're hearing Nineveh. We're hearing all these land masses that belong to Shem. And for Aram, there came forth the fourth portion, all the lands of Mesopotamia between Tigris and the Euphrates, to the north of the Chaldees, to the border of the mountains of Asher and the land of Ararat. And there came forth for Lud the fifth portion, the mountains of Asherah, and all pertaining to them, till it reaches the great sea, until it reaches the east of Asher, his brother. So at this point, any of these sons could have been at Abraham. There could have been a blessed person, you know. There could have been they could have been the chosen people at this point. Just throwing it out there. All these different nationalities to a certain degree, you know. They're all Shemitic, is what I'm trying to say. So sometimes when we think of Shem, not us probably here in the feed, but some people who, you know, they'll just think of Shem as one kind of person, like his posterity were just one kind of phenotype. But Shem had a very diverse phenotype, you know. There was a lot of different variations that made up the sons of Shem. Genesis 9 verse 24 to 26. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him, talking about Ham. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren, and he shall be blessed, and he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. We all know about the story, what took place there with Ham, who some say he did inappropriate actions with his dad. Some people say that he actually castrated his dad. There's so many different things and theories that people say Ham did and didn't do towards Noah. But something happened and he was cursed. But it wasn't him who was cursed. It wasn't Ham and all of his sons who were cursed. The only one who was cursed was Canaan. And we're going to kind of see why Canaan in particular was cursed. So when people talk about Ham this and Ham that and Ham sandwich and Ham this, it wasn't Ham that was cursed. Even though Ham was inappropriate or did something inappropriate to his father, it wasn't necessarily him or the rest of his sons that were cursed. The only one who was cursed was Canaan. But we're going to see why Canaan might have been cursed, because there's more to the story. Okay. So, like I said, let me just quickly charge this laptop for it die. So you got Shem here. This is the genealogy of Shem. Like I said, there's the Elamites, the Ashers, the Arphaxads, the Luds, and the Arams. Remember before though, I said that, well, I didn't say. The Bible just randomly, at the start of Shem and his sons, it highlighted his grandson Eber. I'll put the, let me put this here so you can see. Follow the question mark. So at the beginning, he highlighted his son Eber randomly when he's doing the genealogy of his sons. Eber's not even born at this point, but he just throws Eber in there. But through Eber, you get Peleg. That's when the earth was divided. Then Beru, then Shrug, then Nahu, then Terah. And then through Terah, you get Abraham and Nahor. There's an interesting story about Nahor and Abraham in Jubilees. Very interesting. And it's kind of what catapulted Abraham, along with another story, to be esteemed in the eye of the Most High. But then through Terah, you have Nahor, Abraham, and Haran. And then Haran, you get Lot. And we know Lot he had children with his daughters. And then you got the Moabites and the Ammonites. But also through Abraham. So these are all Shemitic people, you know. Moabites, Ammonites, they're all Shemitic. Yeah? So then when you read that story about Ruth the Moabite and marrying Ruth the Moabite, that was in a way still permissible because it was a son of Shem. It was a child of Shem, if that makes sense. Even though it went through the line of the 12, through Jacob and the Israelites, it was still a part of Shem. It was still a Shemitic people, you know. Nevertheless, through Abraham as well, you had Hagar. And then through Hagar, you have Ishmael. You also have Keturah. And through Keturah, you get the Midianites. And then we know through Abraham, you get Isaac. Through Isaac, you have Jacob. And then through Jacob, you have the Israelites. So Shem was a very diverse, along with Japheth, along with Ham. But I'm just trying to make you see that it wasn't just one type of phenotype or one type of nation. But all these names that you read in here, all these names are sons, and all these sons are founding fathers of nations. Just to give that perspective. Anyway, let's move on. Now, oftentimes people will say, you know, like even people might say, wow, what's the point in learning these things? Like, what's the point about knowing what took place in the past? I mean, the past is the past. It has no impact on us presently to know who belongs to who and what happened to what. What's that got to do with me now in 2029 or 2019 or 2065? Like, what's that got to do with me here and now? But we see that these ideas and concepts still many subscribe to and are bound to. For example, like I said, the misunderstanding that all of Ham's seed is cursed is a fallacy, and it has, like I said, a physical misunderstanding has a spiritual impact today. Also, people will say they know who the sons of Ishmael are because in Genesis it says he'll be a wild man and his hand will be against every nation. You know, the Most High tells us the future in the present. So he tells us he's the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the last. He reveals to us what's going to happen now in the future. So all you have to do is study the past and you'll see certain characteristics that will manifest in the future. All we have to do is study the past and we'll see certain characteristics and attributes that will manifest in the future. So, let's read this. Let's find out about Ishmael, who is also from the seed of Shem. Jubilees 20 verse 11 to 13. And he gave to Ishmael and to his sons and to the sons of Keturah. So we know that Ishmael is coming from who? Hagar, and the sons of Keturah are obviously the sons of Keturah. And he gave them gifts and sent them away from Isaac his son. So Abraham called his sons together, Ishmael and the sons of Keturah and the sons and Isaac. And he gave to Ishmael and to his sons and to the sons of Keturah gifts. So he gave them all, gifts, and sent them away from Isaac, his son. And he gave everything to Isaac. Notice he doesn't even call Ishmael his son, He just says he gave to Ishmael and his sons. And to the sons of Keturah gifts. And he sent them away from Isaac, his son. And he gave everything to Isaac, his son. That's just very interesting. And Ishmael and his sons, and the sons of Keturah and their sons, went together and dwelt from Paran to entering of Babylon in all the land which is towards the east facing the desert. And these mingled with each other, and their name was called Arabs and Ishmaelites. So the sons of Midian, or the sons of Keturah, and the sons of Ishmael, they later on amalgamated into one kingdom or one people, and they were known by these two names, Arabs and Ishmaelites. We're going to see this as we go through the next couple of slides, where two nations consolidate into one. At the beginning of this story, or beginning of this study, I said about the Medo and the Persians, which we can see as a confederacy of two nations merging into one. We're going to see that this kind of happened to a lot of kingdoms. Even when we look at Israel, you had... Let me not rush ahead. Let me not rush ahead. All right, boom. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, but it shall not be numbered for the multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction, and he will be a wild man, and his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. So Ishmaelites, you're going to see them all over the world, and they're going to be kicking up some sort of strife, righteous strife, unrighteous strife, but there's going to be strife, And this doesn't mean necessarily those people who are physically Ishmaelites, but those who subscribe to the tenets and the practices of Ishmaelites. You don't have to be a physical one. You can just be, like I said, there's Pakistanis who subscribe to the religion of Ishmael. There's Somalians who subscribe to the religion of Ishmael. There's Hebrews who subscribe to the religion of Ishmael or Ishmaelite, So you don't have to be one per se, but the spiritual connotation will always be there with these religions. Exodus 18 verse 1. When Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, and that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. So we've got a Midianite, son of Keturah, who became Moses' father-in-law. Notice they were all Shemitic. He wasn't out of the line of Shem. This Midianite, he was still in the line of Shem. Exodus 4 verse 19. And the Lord said unto Moses in Midian, Go return into Egypt, for all the men are dead which sought thy life. So we see Midian interchangeably used as good and bad, like that, even when you look at, all right, I keep skipping ahead. Let me not run ahead. But okay, there we go. That's Midian, sons of Keturah. Sometimes people say all these negative things about so-called people of so-called different nationalities, but we need to understand that there's good and bad in all nations. Just throwing it out there. But let's continue some more. Okay, also I just want to break down the characteristics. So wild man, in the face of all his brothers. He'll be wild, difficult, warlike, contentious, proud, in your face. Some of the characteristics of Ishmael. Characteristics of some Arabs to this day, some, not all, would be very numerous, unable to be numbered. So very, fruitful, a very fruitful nation. We see these characteristics of old today. So when people try to throw the old away, you'll have hell to pay. When you understand the past, understanding the future is just like, wow, we're just repeating the same mistakes, or we're repeating the same good things or whatever. But understanding the past is essential to knowing who we are and how we should be. Okay, let's move on. So the sons of Edom and Shittim or Chittim became one. Now, Book of Jasher, verse 90, 28 to 31. And it came to pass in those days that Albanius, the king of Chittim, died in the 38th year of his reign. That is the 7th year of his reign over Edom. Listen to the name now, Albanius. That sounds like Albania to me. Just being random, but that kind of sounds like Albania. That is the 7th year of the reign, in 7th year of Edom, and they buried him in the place which he built for himself, and Latinus reigned in his stead 50 years. So when Albanius died, a king by the name of Latinus reigned in his stead for 50 years. Interesting. And during his reign, he brought forth an army, and he went and fought against the inhabitants of Britannia, and Kernania, the children of Elisha, the son of Javan, and he prevailed over them and made them tributary. He then heard that Edom had revolted from under the hand of Chittim, and Latinus went to them and smote them and subdued them and placed them under the hand of the children of Chittim, and Edom became one kingdom with the children of Chittim all the days. Now we're going to find out more who these people of Chittim are. And for many years there was no king in Edom, and their government was with the children of Chittim and their king. So like we read earlier, how the Arabs, they kind of peaceably became one nation, or one kind of people. Here we see Chittim and Edom becoming one type of people, but it wasn't through peaceful means. It was through war and strife. But notice the characteristics of Edom in the Bible, because no one really touched on the characteristics that much. So Jubilees 19, and then we're going to look at Genesis, then we're going to look at Obadiah. We're going to, let the precepts talk for themselves. In the 6th week, in the 2nd year thereof, Rebekah bare to Isaac 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob was a smooth and upright man, and Esau was fierce, a man of the field, and hairy. And Jacob dwelt in tents. So if you're saying Jacob dwelt in tents, then by default, Esau must have dwelt outside. And if it's saying that Jacob's smooth, then we know by default Esau was hairy. So that one verse is what you call a contrasting verse, full of comparatives. So it's full of comparisons. Jacob was smooth, his brother was hairy. Jacob was upright, his brother was fierce. Jacob lived in a tent, his brother lived outside. And the youths grew, and Jacob learned to write, but Esau did not learn, for he was a man of the field and a hunter, and he learnt war, and all his deeds were fierce. And Abraham loved Jacob, but Isaac loved Esau. So there are some characteristics of Edom and Jacob, but for this slide, let's just concentrate on Esau. And also, in Genesis it says, to reaffirm what Jubilees is saying, and by the sword shalt thou live, and shall serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass when thou shalt have the dominion that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Interesting. So the only way Esau or Edom was going to establish a kingdom was through the sword, only through colonizing or, those kind of mediums was he going to be able to own or possess land. Then Obadiah says, talking about the same entity, Edom, or the same father, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? So like I said, with the Arabs previously, there was an overlap between two founding fathers that consolidated into one. In this particular circumstance, you see an overlap which was brought about not peaceably but by force, and these two nations became one and the same. Okay, so got quite a few more slides to go through, not even halfway. But let's go through. Whoa, I might even have to take a break, I might take a mini break, but I'll try to persevere for a minute. Jubilees 34, 11 to 12. And they dwelt treacherously with him and formed a plot against him. Okay, sorry, we're looking at Jacob and how Jacob became Israel and the father of the 12 tribes. So out of Jacob came the 12. Yeah? And we're going to look at some characteristics of these people too. Of our people too. We're going to look at these characteristics as well. Good characteristics and not so good characteristics, Alright, so out of the 12, you got Jacob, name changed to Israel. We had 4 women on the go, which is not advisable. Abraham tricked the Pharaoh with Sarah, his half sister. Jacob tricked Esau, and then Jacob gets tricked by his uncle Laban. So we see this kind of generational trickery in the genealogy of Abraham and his sons. So he went on to have 4 wives: Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah. Zilpah had Gad and Asher. Bilhah had Dan and Naphtali. Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin. And Leah, the one who was the most despised, but the first one he married and should have married, because that's the culture in Hebrew society. You marry the first, not the younger. Everything has to be decently and in order. But Isaac was trying to kind of jump the gun. Not Isaac. Jacob was trying to jump the gun. So, Laban kind of tricked him. But anyway, he had Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. He also had a daughter called Dinah. And she had the most sons. But okay. So let's look at a few of these characteristics of the 12 tribes, or the 12 sons, who then became known as the 12 tribes. So let's look at something that's not so good. And they dwelt treacherously with him and formed a plot against him to slay him, but changing their minds, they sold him to Ishmaelite merchants and brought him down into Egypt, and they sold him to Potiphar, the eunuch of the Pharaoh, the chief of the cooks, the priest of the city of Ulubu. So we see that Israel was the first, kind of, if we want to just be honest, they were the first to kind of coin or to sell a brother into slavery. Let's not get more holier than thou. When we read the book of Maccabees, we see a lot of treachery where we were just selling out one another under the boule system of the Grecians. So here we see the first sons of the patriarch Jacob willing to sell one of their own brothers into slavery. And the sons of Jacob slaughtered a kid and dipped it in the goat, and dipped the coat of Joseph in the blood and sent it to Jacob their father on the 10th day of the 7th month. We also see that they have the same trickery spirit as was with Abraham, as was with Jacob, as was with their uncle Laban, where they're trying to be deceitful. And also Jacob's name means, what does his name mean? Supplanter or deceiver or something like that. Let's just be honest. But let's look at some more positive traits. Judah is a lion's whelp from the prey. My son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. So Judah's going to have a work in gathering a lot of people. That's one of his traits, is a gatherer. Yep. And he's also a lion that's sleeping, So not really a sleeping lion. No one really. You're kind of weary of a sleeping lion, but you're not. Well, I'll be honest. I'll be scared of a sleeping lion. I'll just be straight. But if I had an option to be around a lion that's awake or awoke, or a lion that's sleeping, I would much prefer to be around a sleeping lion. So this is showing you the characteristics of Judah. He's a sleeping lion, but who's going to wake him up? And they were known to be very much a gathering and a law-giving people, because we know the Hamashiach came through the seed or the lineage of Judah. Okay, let's look at Benjamin. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf in the morning, devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. And all these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is it that their father spake unto them and blessed them, everyone according to his blessing he blessed them. So we see these traits, like I said earlier with Ishmael, but we should be able to identify these kind of traits with the people today if we're going to make the Bible do its thing, and it doesn't change. 1 Chronicles 12 verse 32. Let's look at Issachar. And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do, the heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment. So we had a lawgiver, the Judah, lawgiver, not a pushover, straight-faced Judah. Then you had Issachar, who was very in touch with the seasons and the times. You had Benjamin, who was raven like a wolf, very, ferocious to deal with. I think Benjamin were the ones who had the left-handed, what do you call it again? The sling throwers that were very courageous in what they did. So there's certain characteristics that we see with Jacob and his sons. Okay, so now we're looking at Japheth. So Japheth now, he divides the land with his sons. And Japheth also divided the land of his inheritance among his sons. And the first portion came forth for Gomer to the east from the north side to the river Tina. And in the north there came forth for Magog all the inner portions of the north until it reaches the sea Miyat. And for Madai came forth as his portion that he should possess from the west of his two brothers to the island and to the coast of the islands. And for Javon came forth the fourth portion of every island and the islands which are toward the border of Lud. So that was Japheth sharing out his inheritance. I just want to say this as well. Globally, every founding father was of a very melanated persuasion. And then over time, due to the environment, they acclimatized to the environment, they adapted to the environment. And like I said before, Japheth was going north, Ham was going south, Shem was kind of in the middle, best of both, cold and hot, and definitely contribute to the melanin increase or the lack of melanin increase. So even though I'm showing a more diluted or more whited out version in the infancy, even the seed or the founding fathers, the the guys that you see here, they would have been of a darker persuasion, you know. Just throwing it out there. I know you think, oh, everyone was just looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not necessarily. They would have been of a much darker persuasion, but obviously as they spread out and this, that, the other, they would have got lighter over time. That's just commonsensical. So just throwing that out there so that people are aware of that. All right. So Japheth's genealogy, Genesis 10:1-5. You got Japheth, then you got Magog, Javon, Meshach, Gomer, Madai, Tubal. Yeah. You got Ashkenaz, Repa, Togarmath. Then you got Kittim, Elisha, Tarshish, and Dodamine. Now, Javon and Magog were probably the most antithetical towards Israel as we go through. In the beginning of Israel's history, a lot of their skirmishes, a lot of their hostility was coming from the sons of Ham, and there was various reasons for why these things took place. But towards the latter period, a lot of their trouble was coming from Javon and Magog. Yeah? And it just follows the same chronological order as Daniel 2, when we see at the top it was more, we had Babylon, then we had Medes and the Persians, then it became more European as you descend down the statue. It became more European, Greeks, Romans, divided toes, Europe, etc. You with me? So, yeah, very interesting. Okay, Ham, Shem. So all the three brothers divide the world to their sons. So Noah, we know he divided it to his sons because they asked him to bless what they had already decided to do, and he said okay, and just went along with the show. And now these three sons, they have sons, and they've just divided it amongst their sons. Proverbs 22 verse 28 says, remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. Jubilees 9:14-15. And thus the sons of Noah divided unto their sons in the presence of Noah, their father, and he bound them all by an oath, imprecating a curse on everyone that sought to seize the portion which had not fallen to him by his lot. And they all said, so be it, so be it. All right, guys, pause. What does this sound like? So be it, so be it. Does this not sound like when the Israelites covenanted with the Most High and made a covenant and said, all that you say we will do, we will do. They came into that, that covenant relationship with the Most High and said, everything that you say we will do. Look how many times they say, so be it twice, And all they said, so this was, let me just back up a little bit. So Noah divided this unto their sons in the presence of, and thus the sons of Noah divided unto their sons in the presence of Noah. So Noah was in the presence and the sons were there too. So all those grandchildren were there and they all said, you know what? Make a curse fall on anyone who doesn't stick to the landmarks. And here, 2 seconds. Yeah, and they all said, so be it, for themselves and their sons forever throughout their generations till the day of judgment, on which the Lord shall judge them with a sword and with fire for all the unclean wickedness of their errors, wherewith they have fulfilled the earth with transgression and uncleanness and fornication and sin. So this was supposed to be forever. So Europe is not going to stop being European anytime soon, or shouldn't be, etc., etc. Fill in the blank. Okay. So at the peak of this, or just before this, should I say, or during this, should I say, So out of all these sons, when you count them all up, there was 70 sons, yeah? So the 70 founding fathers, you could say. Now, let's read Genesis 11, verse 6. So all these people all came together under one umbrella. So all these people came together under one umbrella, and this is post-flood. Some of them are thinking, boy, you know, we have a commonality. We all speak of one tongue. And we all know what tongue that was because I pulled it up in a previous study. They all spoke Hebrew. Hebrew was the ancient tongue of the past. If I find the slide towards the end, I'll throw it in. But in the book of Jubilees, it says they all spoke Hebrew. But I digress. So, out of all these sons came 70 nations. We're going to see something very interesting. Genesis 11, verse 6 to verse 8. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they all have one language, which we know was Hebrew. And this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of the earth, and they left off to build the city. Jasher gives a little bit more insight into what actually took place. And God said to the 70 angels that stood foremost before him, to those who were near to him, saying, come, let us descend and confuse their tongues, that one man shall not understand the language of his neighbor. And they did so to them. Oftentimes people say God was speaking to, or Yahuwah was speaking to, I don't know, I've heard so many different things. But Joshua kind of makes it plain. And then when you calculate that there were 70 sons, and then conveniently, the Most High calls upon 70 angels, it's like, wow, everything was done decently and in order. It wasn't capricious, wasn't haphazard. It was just like, okay, you to him, you to him. And it kind of reminded me of Jethro and Moses. You know, like the Most High has a way of doing things. Like, you know, the Midianites said to Moses, his son-in-law, when Moses was like, okay, I need to, you know, deal with the people more systematically. His father-in-law said, have you thought of fragmenting it and making people own and take ownership of certain things instead of it just being on your shoulders? And we just see here, I know the Most High could do anything on his shoulders, but you know, he just sent 70 angels, and you know, I was like, wow, that's amazing. You see what I'm saying? I was like, wow, 70 angels, 70 sons, and there was just a plethora of different languages, and they all went abroad and scattered on the face of the earth, according to Genesis 11, verse 8. If I do get time though, I tried to throw in that text in Jubilees that said that everyone spoke Hebrew. And when the angels conversed with people, they spoke in Hebrew as well. But yeah, interesting. Because when people talk about this tongues thing, when people are talking in tongues going, yeah, incomprehensible languages, and then they think that's divine and inspired, it doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. But we'll touch on that we'll touch on that another day. All right, so backing up slightly, guys that came together said, you know what, we're gonna, divide the land between the three. Then the three divided the land between their sons, and then their sons made a covenant with Noah and said, okay, we're not gonna encroach or to take what doesn't belong to us, and whoever does, they're going to be cursed. Jubilees 10:27 to 29. In the fourth week, in the first year, in the beginning thereof, in the fourth and thirtieth Jubilee, were they dispersed from the land of Shinar. Shinar is the land of where the Tower of Babel was being built. This is following on from that. And Ham and his sons went into the land which he was to occupy. See, this is when that there was all together with one accord, one purpose, one language in apostasy towards the Most High. And then after this, when they were dispersed, that's when they decided then to go to the lands which they were eligible for. And Ham and his sons went to the land which he was to occupy, which he acquired as his portion in the land of the south. And Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good. He sounds like Lot and Abraham. When Abraham says, which way do you want to go? When he's looking, Lot, and he says, yeah, I want to go to the fertile land. And uncle, my old uncle, you can go to the less fertile land. Check this. And Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good. And he went not into the land of his inheritance to the west, that is to the sea. And he dwelt in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward, from the border of Jordan and from the border of the sea. And Ham, his father, and Cush, and Mizraim, his brothers, said unto him, make note of this, because like I said, most of the time, all of Ham just gets thrown in onto Ham just gets thrown under there's so much kind of this crazy racism and crazy things that people say, man. But I want people just to understand what was going on, which got us to where we are today. That's the point of this study. And to also see a revelation of the Most High Yah. But hear this. And Ham, so let's back up to 29. Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good. And he went not into the land of his inheritance to the west, that is to the sea. And he dwelt in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward from the border of Jordan and from the border of the sea. So you got red eye you wanted a land that didn't belong to him. And Ham, his father, Cush, and Mizraim, his brothers, said unto him, thou hast settled in a land which is not thine, and which did not fall to us by the lot. Do not do so, for if thou dost do so, thou and thy sons will fall in the land, and be accursed through sedition, for by sedition ye have settled, and by sedition will thy children fall, and thou shalt be rooted out forever. So by him taking his course of action, it wasn't just going to affect him, but it was going to affect his children too. And we can see that his brothers, including Ham, are telling him not to take the land of Shem. Dwell not in the dwelling of Shem, for to Shem and to his sons did it come by their lot. Cursed art thou, and cursed shall thou be beyond all the sons of Noah, by the curse by which we bound ourselves, by an oath in the presence of the holy judge, Yahuwah, and in the presence of Noah our father. But he didn't hearken unto them, and dwelt in the land of Lebanon, from Hamar to entering of Egypt, he and his sons till this day. And for this reason, that land is named Canaan. Now, when you read Genesis, a lot of people read Genesis and there's not a lot of detail. You can kind of speculate and kind of, peddle ideas and thoughts and opinions, but all of it is just deifying logic and opinions, But when you see the book of Jubilees just making it crystal clear what happened, so then when you read why, you know what, let me not rush ahead. We're going to see it here. So, like I was saying, Canaan decides to take fast and break the oath. Now, when you just read the Bible, Genesis, Deuteronomy, or just the Bible in general, but the Old Testament preferably, and you look at the history between the two, it just seems a bit abrupt, you know. The Most High says to Moses, I'm taking you out of the Egyptian bondage. I'm going to take you to a land that's filled with milk and honey. And also at the same time, you're going to commit genocide on the people who are there and take their land. You're like, wow, how come the Most High is just like dealing with these people like that? And then you might try to reason it like the Bible says that Israel will be his battle axe. So, you know, the Most High would, you know, and you can try to fit it into all these kind of different thoughts, theories, and opinions. But like I said, when you see it crystal clear, unequivocally, unapologetically in Jubilees, telling you what took place to lead to that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? To that kind of animosity, it just fills in the gaps, you know? Because people often use that argument to say, how can you justify a God who commits genocide or tells someone to commit genocide on a people and to take their land and this, that, the other? But truth be told, the land of Canaan never belonged to Canaan, but it belonged to the sons of Shem. And then when you read Jubilees, you see that it got narrowed down further to Abraham because of what Abraham was doing and how he separated from Terah, his father, and how he even separated from his brothers. And it gives you the details of what took place and why Abraham was chosen out of the sons of Shem. So before that point, it was up for anyone, any Shem, Elam, anyone could have claimed it. But then it got narrowed down and then became the possession of Abraham. But I ain't going to go into all that on this study. But I just wanted to show you that, you know, the history behind certain things. That we don't know, and to you know, give a more broader picture of what was taking place back then. This is why when we see Exodus 13, it says, and it shall be when the Lord shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites. Now Canaan went on to have many sons. Let me just count them quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 sons, I believe. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, which we swear unto. Now listen to this now. Listen, hear this. Exodus 13 verse 5. And it shall be when the Lord shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he sware unto thy fathers, talking to Moses, but saying to the fathers, to give thee a land flowing with milk and honey, that thou shalt keep this service in this month. So he's talking to Moses, but he's recounting a promise that was made to Moses' fathers. Yeah, this is predating Jacob, Isaac, Abraham. This is going back to Shem. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and have cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, and he says 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. So we're going to bring you to a place, we're going to take some of them out, but there's going to be 7 that are a bit more stronger than you. Okay? But thou shalt utterly destroy them, namely the Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, as the Lord Yahuwah have commanded thee. And then Exodus 23 verse 23, for some reason I cut off half the scripture, but it says, talking about the 7 that are going to be hard to overpower, it says, for my angel shall go before thee and bring thee into the land of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites. Let me find the rest of that. Exodus 23, just to finish that off. Exodus 23. Oh, it says, for my angel shall go before thee and bring thee in unto the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I will cut them off. So the angel's gonna cut off these other kingdoms or these other sons of Canaan, yeah, on Israel's behalf because they're too mightier than for you to do alone. Yeah, a lot of history here, guys, a lot of history. And I just wanted to show you as well. I'll make this map slightly bigger so we can all see if I don't delete it incorrectly. All right, mute that. Boom, make this bigger. All right, so here you go. There's Canaan, yeah. This, where's my arrow? I ain't got arrow, Where's that arrow? Oh man. All right, let me just use this image as an arrow potentially. All right, so. All right, there's Canaan. This is the land of Canaan where this square is. You see the square? Okay, that's Canaan. Now from Canaan, you got all these 11 sons. Yeah, 1, 2, all them 11 sons. Now Israel was coming from wherever they were coming from, but they had to pass through here, Mizraim, Egypt. Yeah, had to pass through here to get to Canaan, which was their own land anyway. But Ham, son, Canaan decided to take it, and his sons then decided to have it. Similarly, you could kind of look at this as colonialism, in like South Africa right now. There's people that it's not their land, but their daddy and their mothers robbed the land fairly. Like my mom and my dad robbed this land and stole this land fairly. And not only that, but I have grandchildren now, and I have great-grandchildren, and this is my house. And I appreciate it's on stolen land, but my mum and dad stole it fairly. And all I am is just the recipient of their stolen property. That's all I am, but I didn't steal it. Therefore, by default, this land should belong to me and my posterity. I haven't done anything myself personally. So Canaan, he's here with his sons in a land that's not his. His sons have set up shop, set up banks, set up supermarkets, cinemas, set up game stores, and I don't know, set up everything, yeah? But it doesn't belong to him. And the Most High is bringing another, this is the arrow, by the way. The Most High is bringing the true owners back to the land. It's like a squatter. You have a squatter in your house. You've left the house and you come back and there's a squatter there. But, but now it's not just a squatter, but the squatter has his children. He's had children in your house while you've been away. You've been away for 2 years and, squatters have gone there and they've had twins and they've had kids in your house. You've come back to your house and the squatters are saying, why? The squatters' kids are saying, all I've known is this house. This house was my house from the beginning. I mean, you can't possibly want me to come out of this house. All I know is this house. So I'm trying to make it a bit more plain and make it more relatable. This was the situation that was facing the Canaanites. And this is why a lot of them were hostile to Israel. And while Israel was hostile to them, because the land was promised to them, Israel, but Canaan had took fast and took the land. And obviously his children were then trying to defend their father, who their father was, he shouldn't have had the land in the first place. Similarly, like I'm saying, with colonialism in America, in Africa, in Jamaica, we have plantation owners, the sons or posterity of these people who still own the land and say it wasn't me, and they won't return it to the rightful owners. And then when the true owners challenge them, they get uncomfortable. They get what I call fragility, hostile, and instead of making right, they make wrong and defend somebody who stole something's honor instead of doing an honorable thing and returning whatever doesn't belong to them. But this is just to make you see in 2019 how this would relate today. Hope that makes sense. All right, so origin of Philistine beef. Now, some people will say, it started with Goliath, but we know it kind of predated that. Genesis 26:17-20. And Isaac departed thence and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. And Isaac digged again the wells of the water that they had digged in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and he called the names after the names by which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there a well springing water. And the herdsmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying, the water is ours. And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. Now, like I said, the Philistines, they come from Mizraim, Mizraim's grandchildren. All right. Jubilees 24 now is going to give you a little bit more insight into what's going on in Genesis 26. And he, Isaac, sold in the land of the Philistines and brought in 100-fold, and Isaac became exceedingly great, and the Philistines envied him. Now all the wells which the servants of Abraham had dug during the life of Abraham, the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and filled them with earth. So they tried to stop their water supply. Interesting. And Isaac on that day cursed the Philistines and said, cursed be the Philistines unto this day of wrath and indignation from the midst of all nations. May God make them a derision and a curse and an object of wrath and indignation in the hands of sinners, the Gentiles, and in the hands of Kittim. Kittim. Why Kittim of all places? And why is Gentiles and Kittim in the same verse? Remember previously, I'm going to have to go back to the beginning almost. The sons of Japheth were known as Gentiles. That was what they were called. They were called Gentiles. And we see that this son, Kittim or Chittim, is a son of Javon. If you look at verse 4, and the sons of Javon, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodami. Yeah? So Isaac's cursing out the Philistines and saying, yo, I want cursing out the Philistines and saying, yo, I want Kittim to come and brook you up. I want them Gentile Kittims to come and brook you up for what you've done, desecrating the wells of my fathers. That's pretty much what he's saying there. All right. So there we see what kind of led to their beef. And it's kind of synonymous to the beef that took place with Israel in Egypt. You know, there was a Pharaoh who was very good to the Israelites. He welcomed them. He was very affable. You know, he wasn't a bad guy per se. Then another Pharaoh took over in his stead, from the seed of Mizraim again. And he envied the Israelites, and he put taskmasters over them and overseers and put burdens onto their burdens and this, that, and the other. And that was due to envy as well. Or due to fragility, scared that they might get overpowered, you know. So they came with eugenics to try to stop to stop them reproducing, you know. So we just see this repeat of history, and usually it's envy that builds and brings about a multitude of sins. Envy. In heaven, there was envy. Lucifer wanted to be like the Most High. We see all this spirit of envy leads to a lot of issues. Cain and Abel, envy, you know. All right. So everyone got divided their land, yeah? But Japheth wasn't happy with his land either. So Canaan, he just stole it. Japheth, he kind of uses a different tactic. He uses diplomacy. So Japheth and his sons went towards the sea and dwelt in the land their portion. And Madai saw the land of the sea, and it did not please him. And he begged a portion from Ham and Asher and Arphaxad, his wife's brother. And he dwelt in the land of Media, near to his wife's brother, until this day. And he called the dwelling place and the dwelling place of his sons Media, after the name of their father, Madai. So they use diplomacy. Genesis 9 also says, though, God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Now, I'm not saying all of Africa is called Canaan. No, I'm not. We've just went through this. We can see There was many sons, many different nations, yeah? But we know that Japheth was going to come to the land and increase himself. Yeah, God was going to bring him to the land through disobedience. I should have put the scripture in there that linked it to disobedience, but we'll just, So he initially used diplomacy, and his brothers granted him some land, and the land that they granted him was, I'm going to use this as an arrow, was Media, yeah? And then there's Persia. And we know that Persia was stronger than Media. So sometimes, in Daniel we call it the kingdom of Persia, or we say Medes and the Persians, but Persia was the stronger out of the two. Persia was Shemitic, to answer the question at the beginning. Persia was Shemitic, an Elamite. It was Elam, son of Elam. Yeah, so it was Shemitic. But Media was like a red herring, because Media was Japhetic. But when the two came together, it was run by a Shemitic king, a Persia. Yeah, an Elamite, a Persian. Just thought I'd throw that out there anyway. But yeah, they swiftly moved through. And remember, we read earlier as well that Canaan would also be, God shall enlarge, and he shall the tents of Shem, the tents of Shem. And we read earlier that Canaan would also be a servant to Shem as well. So he's going to be a servant to Shem and a servant of Japheth. Now, I'm not talking about the whole of Africa. That's ridiculous. We're just talking about a son from the landmass that is called Ham, which is now commonly called Africa. Okay. Now, like I said, Japheth's Gentile or posterity was towards the latter end where we are today, most adverse to Israel. The sons of Javan, Genesis 10, Javan, Eliashah, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodamine were very antagonistic towards Israel. And Javan is where you get the Greeks. The Greeks, their founding father was Javan. The children, if you read Joel chapter 3 verse 6, it says, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem ye have sold unto the Grecians, that ye may remove them far from their border. So we saw that in Joel, that Greeks played a role, especially when we read the book of Maccabees like we've been doing. We've seen how the Grecians and the Spartans and the Romans and the Israelites were in communication with one another, etc. Okay. Then if we go to Daniel 11 verse 30, we're going to see the Romans. Daniel 11 verse 30. For the ships of Shittim or Chittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do, he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. That's talking about Rome. If we go to Joshua 10 verse 16, it says, and the children of Chittim are the Romim, or the Romans, who dwell in the valley of Cananopia by the river Tiberu. Now let's read Luke verse 31. Luke was a historian. Let's hear what Luke says about the Caesar, and in particularly Caesar's name. Now in the 5th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, and Herod being Tetrarch of Galilee, and his brother Philip Tetrarch of, I can't say that, and of the region of Trachonitis, and Lysanias, the Tetrarch of Abilene. So I just wanted to highlight that Joshua says that Chittim is Romim or Romans. Yeah, and I think Josephus even links Chittim to being the Romans. So when you see Chittim or Shittim, he's talking about the Romans. And they were by the river Tiberu. And then you got the Caesar, who was named Tiberius. We see it all linking together. It's like the Bible is like a massive jigsaw puzzle, and you just have to put the pieces together by Yah's grace and by his spirit, and like I said, these nations came together. So the ancient city of Petra, if you look at the architecture, is very much in collaboration to what you see in Rome, in the Pantheon. The Edom city of Rome and the Edom ancient city of Petra It says, the pride of thine heart has deceived thee, talking about Edom, the characteristics of Edom. Thou dwellest in the clefts of the rock. I won't even touch on that. Whose habitation is high, but saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? So there you go. You know, Japheth has always been linked to Gentiles, always been linked to Goim or Guim, yeah? And there was always found in the north. But one particular tribe of Japheth, the Madai, begged for some land of that was in the land of Shem and Ham, and he was the father of the Madais or the Medes. But aside from him, everyone was more up north. And we just found out there that Chittim or Shittim is synonymous to Rome, and that Javan was synonymous to Greeks. All right, getting almost through the study. So what did Israel do to provoke this treatment of the Gentiles? Mark 10:33, saying, behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man shall be delivered unto the chief priests and unto the scribes, and they that shall condemn him to death, and shall deliver him to the Gentiles. Who are the Gentiles again? The Japhetic people. For he shall be delivered unto the Gentiles, and he shall be mocked, and spitefully entreated, and spitted on. Who are the Gentiles again? Modern day Europeans, modern day Greeks, modern day Romans, all one in the same, all have the same founding father, Japheth. We saw how there was an overlap with Edom and Japheth becoming one in the same, like we saw with the Arabs, and how Midian, the son of Keturah and his sons, and Ishmael, the son of Hagar and his sons, became the Arabs and the Ishmaelites. Similarly to how Judah and Israel was divided, you had the 10 in the north that were known as Israel, and the 2 in the south that were known as what? Judah. You had Benjamin and Judah, which made up Judah, and then you had the 10 up north, which made up Israel. Okay. So we already know about that, and we already know about this, and there we go. And they led Yeshua away, the high priest, and with him were assembled all the high priests and all the elders and the scribes. Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So when we looked at the Maccabees, they tried to do this, but they was unable to its full capacity. Yeah. And also we know that Luke's writing during the occupation or the time period of the Caesars. So the only Gentiles at this point, if we're looking at the statue as our point of reference, you know, you've got Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. So Luke's writing this during the Roman occupation of Israel. So the Gentiles that broke down the temple in AD 70 would have to be who? The Romans. Or you could say the Japhetic people of Javan, because they all come from or through Japheth. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So we can see there that the Gentiles in this same narrative has and will always be the sons of Japheth. Okay, that being said, and when Yeshua entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion beseeching him, saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Yeshua saith unto him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this man, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth. When Yeshua heard it, he marveled and said to them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. So you got this Romy Chittim guy, yeah, with this mammoth faith. And Yeshua even knew that it was these same people that, under direction of his own people, were going to pierce him and kill him and hang him on a tree. Yeah, he knew this already. But that didn't, like I said, the Most High don't really care about the melanin. He cares about the righteousness. And he's like, okay, even though your people are going to be the people who kill me due to my people encouraging, not all of Israel, let's be fair, but, you know, like I said earlier, a physical action can have a spiritual effect nationally. Yeah, so there was some or few that did what they did. You know, out of the 12, Judas was a devil. So it wasn't all of them that betrayed Christ, just one. But that one had a catastrophic impact on the rest. Likewise, the few that sold out the Messiah had a catastrophic impact on the rest. Slavery, you know. But anyway, and I say unto you that many shall come from the east and the west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom, Israel, shall be cast out into darkness. Darkness, there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Those who are unholy, not just Israel in general, but those, you know, who are Israel by name, but heathen by detail. You know? So that, like I said, the Most High don't play when it comes to righteousness. You know, if you're righteous, it's all blessed. You know, if you're seeking the Most High and His law, is you know, he doesn't really do favor. He doesn't really do, what's the word I'm looking for? Bribery or blandishments. He that is filthy, let him be filthy still. He that is holy, let him be holy still. He that is righteous, let him be righteous still. He that is filthy, let him be filthy still. So that's just one example of a Japhetic person who the Messiah or the Hamashiach knew was going to be of the same people responsible for killing him, but still bigging him up and saying, you know what? Even though you're from Japheth, you got big faith. You got more faith than my people at this current moment in time, because they're supposed to know better. And like I say, if you got a lawyer and you got a high school dropout, who are you going to judge more, the lawyer or the high school dropout? Israel was the Most High's lawyer, the Most High's police force. You know, they had ribbons of blue, the boys in blue, the men in blue, but they weren't living up to the light of the Most High. But let's continue. All right, so how did the Messiah treat the sincere woman of Canaan? And let me just make a disclaimer too. This was a sincere Roman. Yeah, that he said, okay, give him a blight. Sincere, that being the key word. Yeah? How did the Messiah treat the sincere woman of Canaan? Given the history of the past. Yeah? Then Yeshua went hence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, have mercy on me, Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, send her away, for she crieth after us. And he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. Now, why is to notice, this is why Yeshua just blanked her. Yeshua HaMashiach just blanked her. Yeah? He goes into a place, and a woman of Canaan just comes out, cries unto him, saying, have mercy unto me, O Lord thou God of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. Yeah? But it's only at the point where she kind of realized she didn't really have that entitlement. She took a different approach. Because if you read 25, it says, then came she. She was already there. So how did she come again? She re-came. You know what they say, like, you need to check yourself. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. So instead of giving the Most High, or instead of giving Yeshua instructions of what he needs to do because of her daughter, given the history of the two nations and the animosity between the two nations. That's like, I don't know, KKK just coming to the coming to church and saying, yo, I don't know, you need to heal my son. He just fell off his tractor. Yeah? And then the Israelite minister's just like, huh? Just quiet, you know. And then he's like, you know what? Let me just recheck this. And then he came and worshipped the, Yeshua. And then from there, let's see what took place in the conversation. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. Instead of telling him what to do, she just asked for help. He answered, it's not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. Then she humbled herself again and said, and she said, truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. Then Yeshua answered and said unto her, woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as it will. And her daughter was made whole that very day. And Yeshua departed hence and came nigh unto the Sea of Galilee and went up into the mountain and sat down there. So we see that Yeshua wasn't really biased when it came to even the strangers or even those who are antithetical to Israel. If they came with the right approach, the right spirit, he wasn't really going to turn them away. He would test their sincerity, but he wasn't just going to turn them away. This was interesting. And I was thinking, nah, this don't really make that much sense, to be honest. You know what I'm saying? I thought this don't really make sense. So I had to get the concordance out just to dig a little bit deeper. Matthew 10 verse 1 to 4. The 12 apostles or disciples. And when he called unto the 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the publican, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus. Now listen to this part. Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Now, I was thinking, that don't make no sense. Because here we see that the disciples were there with him. And if we're reading this correctly, there was a Canaanite disciple there by the name of Simon. Yeah. He would have been there with the disciples. And what did they say? Where's their response? Oh yeah. 23. And the disciples came and besought him, saying, send her away, for she crieth after us. So amongst those disciples would have been a Canaanite disciple. I was thinking. And then Yeshua said, I didn't come to the house. I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But there's a Canaanite disciple with them. I was thinking, that don't. I was like, how does that even work? So when I dug a little bit deeper and I looked at the concordance, yeah, it was kind of an overreaching, in my opinion, thing to put in there when I look at the concordance, because it says this translation only appears twice in the King James, and it says Khaledi origin, and it just means zealous. So it doesn't mean. All right, let me read out what it says. Zealous, Canaanites, epithet, and then it says by mistake, derivative of another translation. So it says that it might have been a mistake from another translation. Very interesting. That's why it helps to have your King James and to have a concordance, you know? So when they was translating that, potentially there was a bit adventurous, you know, like with the Songs of Solomon, and they say, because I don't look on me because I am black but comely. The but, which was added as an adversative or adversative, was added by the scholars. It wasn't there originally. What it was supposed to read was black, beautiful, or black and beautiful. Not black but comely, but black and comely, or black and beautiful. So here I was like, right, okay. So you could look at the Simon the Canaanite as being one of a characteristic or of being a Canaanite, but it wouldn't really add up with the rest of the narrative. So it actually says in the brackets, by a mistake for a derivative and then gives you another translation of the word. But it only appears twice. So it's saying that Simon the Canaanite was zealous. So it was a characteristic rather than a nationality, if that makes sense. Okay. Israel at its peak taught and welcomed Israel at its peak taught and welcomed strangers in the ways of Yah. Spelled welcome wrong, I think. Did I? Yeah. Anyway, so 1 Kings 10 verse 1. And when the Queen Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. Notice, and when the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon, was it the fame of Solomon? Let's find out. Concerning the name of the... There we go. So it wasn't his fame per se of himself, but his fame and his reputation that he had for the word or for the name of the Most High. She came to prove him with hard questions. Genesis 10 verse 7. So Sheba, the queen of Sheba, she is a daughter of the sons of Cush. Again, Cush is where, what's his name came from? What's his name now? Slipped out my mind. Nimrod, you know? Who was one of the architects behind Babel. Or the Tower of Babel. 1 Kings verse 10 and 10. And she gave the king 100 talents of gold and of spices, very great store, precious stones, and there came no more such abundance of spices as these which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. So we saw that Israel at its peak under the rulership of Solomon, it had trade with outside nations. It was very welcoming of outside nations. When we read the book of Maccabees, we saw that Israel was writing decrees with the Romans and with the Spartans just for peace, not for them to be a god unto them or to make an oath unto them or to form an alliance with them, but just for peace, you know, like just being peaceable. Like many of us are very opening as a people. Like I say, sometimes to our own detriment. We're so open and so embracing that sometimes it can be hazardous to the health. But nevertheless, our people were always opening. 1 Kings 10:13, and King Solomon gave unto the queen of Sheba all her desire, whatsoever she asked, beside that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. So she turned and went to her own country, she and her servants. So you see, very affable, very approachable. You know, this is at the peak of Israelite society under the kingship of Solomon, who managed to have everyone united under one umbrella. And I believe it even said that during Solomon, Israel had peace. We know after Solomon, it got a bit sticky. But, you know, during Solomon's campaign, it was very nice, very, very peaceful. Okay. Israel of old and Israel of new welcome sincere strangers. 2 Kings 19 verse 9. And when he heard say to Taharka, king of Ethiopia, behold, he is come out to fight against thee, he sent messengers again unto Hezekiah, saying, and he heard say concerning Taharka, king of Ethiopia, he is come forth to make war with thee. And he heard it, he sent messengers to Hezekiah, saying, so I didn't put all the story in, which I probably should have to give you the context, but when you read that in your own time, Taharka was there to kind of warn Hezekiah not to go against, I believe it was Egypt at that time, because it wasn't going to work out well for him. But he disregarded the advice and incidentally was killed in battle. So we saw there how Taharka was trying to, you know, like with the Midianite father-in-law of Moses, tried to give Israel some good advice. Also, if you read Acts chapter 2 verse 27, and he rose, talking about Philip, And he rose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians, and he had charge of all her treasure, and had come to Jerusalem for to worship. So these people, old and new, Ethiopians, were coming to the land of Israel. Even these Cushites were coming to the land of Israel to hear the wonderful works of the Most High. Not to, stroke Israelite egos, but for the Israelites to teach them the wonderful words of the Most High. Nothing more, nothing less. And also the Israelites at that time were very appreciative, respectable, approachable, affable, and teachable to these people. Philip had to break down to the Ethiopian the prophecies in Isaiah. And then when he broke it down to him, this son of Ham asked if he could be baptized, and he was baptized. Okay. That being said, there is an order to things. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Hamashiach, for it is the power of Yahuwah unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, or the Hebrew first, or the Israelite first, and also to the Greek. We just realized that the Greek is the Gentiles. Tribulation and anguish upon every soul that doeth evil, of the Jew first, and also of the Gentile. But glory, honor, and peace to every man that worketh good, to the Jew first, and also to the Gentile. So, if we do good as a nation or as a people, it will be rewarded. If we do bad, it will be rewarded. But like I said, with the illustration of the lawyer and with the illustration of the high school dropout, Israel in the Most High's eyes is seen as the firstborn, seen as the cream of the crop. Yeah? It's seen as his wife, his bride. However, oftentimes, with being his firstborn son, the Bible says, if you are without chastisement, you are bastards. Yeah, the bastards in the Bible. So there is a hierarchy to things. Like, I would put a lot more expectation on my firstborn than my secondborn, because I expect my firstborn to know my ways more thoroughly, because he's known me longer than my secondborn, if that makes sense. So this is the way the Most High has his authority. Everything's done decently and in order, Now, John 19 verse 4. Pilate therefore went forth again and saith, I find no fault in him. So this is a Gentile talking about Yeshua and saying, I find no fault in him. No fault. I didn't see any crazy Facebook post. I didn't see any crazy swearing on a YouTube channel. I didn't see any fornicating with male and beast or female and beast. I didn't see any of that. I didn't see him. I saw him get a bit fiery in the temple and have to chase out some money chain. Some people that were gambling and doing crazy stuff in the temple. I saw him do some straight rebukes, zero tolerance rebukes. Some rightful judgments in the temple. But I can't say I ever saw this guy. He didn't look effeminate. He carried the cross a long way. He didn't give off any emasculating, effeminate presence around me. None of that at all. Check this. The centurion saw what was done. He glorified Yah, saying, certainly this was a righteous man. So this isn't Israel saying this. This is the Gentile them, who were amalgamated with the Edomites, saying of the character of Yeshua that he was a righteous man. When he was on the cross, he didn't swear and say, you know what, bun all of you lot, blows and skirt, this, that, the other, cussing them off. He just said, Father, forgive them for not what they do. And he shouted it. In some of these Hollywood films and that, he's out of breath, and the guy shouted, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. 1 Peter 2 verse 12, it says, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as an evildoer, they may, by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify Yah in the day of visitation. So I'm saying, What's our excuses of not living the same? What's our excuse for not doing and living the same way as we've seen our forefathers and our foreparents? I hope you found this interesting, and as always, provoking thought.